So that's Richard Heath Jr., amazing man, and I call him the Renaissance man, sitting behind his congas, his percussion. Richard Heath Jr. I
Yes,
just
sir.
want to ask you a question about the martial arts in particular. You are a martial arts and martial science, what we consider at this particular point, an icon, legend, pioneer, hero of the community. Tell us who was your first teacher and what style?
I started out in Shotokan. My first teacher was Willie Short and Brian Bray at the Kobayashi Karate Studios off of Western, 92nd and Western. And that was in 1967, I believe. Yeah, 1967. I was about 12 years old, 12 and a half, almost 13 when I started.
That's awesome. That school also had some of the legends, Ernest Russell, Al Canister,
Gary Goodman,
Gary Goodman, the Robinson brothers and the
Robinson
father.
Brothers, yeah.
Who else?
Al
The
Canister,
Yeah. What about the brothers? What was the brothers' name? Charles and Choo Choo Mays.
Choo Choo Mays, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
uh, um, Nathan Cruz.
Yes, 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 yes.
So you came to the Black Karate Federation. Can you tell the story of why you left the Kobayashi School? Is it too personal?
No, I've shared this before,
Uh-huh.
but I actually did not leave the Kobayashi Karate School. When I was a brown belt, I, well, first of all, at the Kobayashi Karate tournament back in 1970, I believe, 70 or 71, the first Kobayashi Karate tournament, 70,
70.
70. I got a chance to see for the first time the BKF fighters. And I'd heard about the BKF fighters, but never seen the BKF fighters in action. And they were in the tournament with us under the Kobayashi Karate system. And I got a chance to see a different style that really inspired me. You know, because I came from Shotokan, real straight punches, hard kicks, but my body type was that was more conducive of more speed, more technique. And when I saw the guys in the BKF, I was like, oh my God, I got to find out where these guys are training because this is awesome. And so I kind of befriended some of the BKF guys, one being yourself. And when I was a brown belt, I got a chance to fight on a BKF brown belt team. And coming from a very traditional style Shotokan, my instructor, Willie Short, the way he was taught and brought up, you never mixed with other schools without permission from the sensei. And most of the time, he wouldn't give you permission anyway. He just wanted you to learn his style. And being a young man, 15 years old, not quite 16 yet, I wanted to learn as much as I could. So the guys from the BKF befriended me as I befriended them, and they asked me, hey man, would you like to fight on our brown belt team? And I was like, oh, wow. This was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. So I ended up fighting on the brown belt team, BKF. And I remember it like yesterday. The guy I fought was Cecil Peoples. Yeah, me and Cecil mixed it up.
Yeah.
It was a great fight. And I don't think we won. I think we came in like number 4 or something like that. But later on, during the week, when I went to my normal Tuesday night training at Kobayashi Karate. I go through the back door, start dressing and everything. All the students are on the floor. Willie Short calls me. He says, Ricky Heath, I need you to come out on the floor. So I'm like, he said, don't get dressed. Come out on the floor. So I went out on the floor in front of all the students. He says, I heard you were fighting on a team with the BKF. And I was like wondering, how did he even know? But small world, everybody talks. And I said, yes, sir. He says, well, that's against the rules for here. And you betrayed us. And I'm 15 years old. I betrayed you. And I'm trying to explain myself, and he just cuts me off. He says, you are no longer welcome here. You're no longer welcome here. Leave and never come back. Man, I was devastated. Yeah, I'm 15 years old, brown belt. I'm getting ready to be promoted to black. Russell and I were both brown belts together. And he told me to get my stuff and get out and never come back. So where do you think I headed? I went right to the BKF studio and let the guys know what had happened. And they welcomed me with open arms. I remember like it was yesterday. Welcomed me with open arms. And I started my training with the BKF at 15 years old. And I think within a year after that, Steve promoted me to black belt, along with Kreger and Montre, a lot of others.
Hot Dog. There's the four of us. So
yes.
And you became a legend, and that's the whole thing. So unfortunately, it's like one person's loss is another person's gain or something, and
That's what they say.
maybe that was part of your journey, that you had to go through, because it definitely didn't stop you, and I need to find out, and I want everybody to know. You were telling me earlier that you had this thing that was pulling and tugging. You had your love for the arts.
Oh, yeah.
And your love for the arts. Could you tell us about that? The music and karate.
Well, when I was around 12 years old, almost 13, I picked up percussion, and my parents said that I used to beat on stuff when I was a young boy, little guy. And so eventually, I think it was my uncle. His name was Sonny. He played the saxophone. He saw that I had some rhythm and talent in that area, and he bought me my first conga when I was about 12 and a half. So I started practicing, listening to the radio, playing records, watching guys on TV, going to the park, the beach, watching the guys play, and I started just imitating what I saw. I really wanted to learn. And throughout high school, I started playing with different local bands and stuff. And by the time I was about in 11th, 12th grade, I was pretty good. I was in the jazz band in Morningside High School. And I had played with a couple of very popular local bands during that time. And there was a young man by the name of Robert Dingle who went to school with me. And he was working with a group of people through the Mavericks Flats. And John Daniels was the owner of Mavericks Flats back then. And he used to produce groups and put together groups and send them overseas to work in different venues and clubs and things like that. Well, he was putting together this group called DeBlanc. And Robert was the drummer. And they were looking for a percussionist that could sing. So Robert he said, "Hey man, would you be interested in auditioning for this group?" He said, "Well," I told him, I said, "Well, man, I can't go nowhere until I graduate from high school. My mother ain't gonna let me, leave the country. Yeah, I'm only 17 years old. You know what I mean?"
Yeah.
So he said, "Well, we're gonna rehearse for a few months, and they're not planning on going overseas until about October." So, I was scheduled to graduate in July from Morningside High School. I was a senior. So I said, okay, well, that sounds pretty reasonable. So I went up to Mavericks, auditioned. I got the gig, ended up working with the DeBlanc group overseas for about 3.5 years. And befriended one of the guitar players in the group, Alex Weir, who was the cousin of the group, the Brothers Johnson, George and Louis Johnson. Well, during that time, we got stranded over in Europe, and the timing was perfect. George had just recently contacted Alex and told him, he said, "Hey man, Louis and I, we just signed a deal with Quincy Jones, man. We're in the studio right now, and he wants us to put together a band because he wants to go out on tour, and he wants to introduce us through his band, but he wants us to play his music and our music. So he said, we need you to come back here as soon as you can, man, because,
Okay. Let me just do